Right now, a Canadian story about risk and reward. Here's Andrew Chang with the goods.
Hey, Adrian. It's the story of two Ontario towns facing a difficult choice. Do they agree to bury tons of nuclear waste underneath their towns in exchange for vast sums of money? We'll explain how it all works. How would you feel about having nuclear waste buried right under where you live? Green, glowing, piping hot. Okay, it doesn't actually look like that. It looks more like this. But that is the question people in these two tiny Ontario towns have to decide. Both are voting on whether Canada's first permanent nuclear storage facility will go ahead right under their feet. And there's a lot of waste to store, the equivalent of 9 NHL-sized hockey rinks full of the stuff. So, of course, some people are a little anxious. But why on earth would anyone consider voting yes?
It comes with big subsidies from the nuclear industry and lots of high-paying jobs.
It's about money. Storing nuclear waste, turns out, can be lucrative for a small town. So these communities face this monumental, irreversible choice. They can either turn away a life-changing amount of money or take the deal. And if things somehow go wrong, the town will never be the same. What powers a nuclear plant are these tiny uranium pellets that get put inside fuel rods and bundled together. Those rods last a long time, 3 to 6 years. After they're spent, you swap them out. But they can stay radioactive for hundreds of thousands of years. And scientists have been trying for decades to figure out what to do with them.
We do not have in hand at this moment any satisfactory solution to the handling of spent fuel in the long term.
I foresee that if we continue, there will be the epidemic of cancer, leukemia, and genetic injuries that I fear.
So Canada right now has what you might call a temporary solution. First step, cool the rods. They're extremely hot, so they're dunked into a giant cement-lined pool of water. They stay there for about 7 to 10 years. After that, they're transferred into massive steel containers and stored in super dense concrete bunkers. Now, I said this was temporary, but some of Canada's nuclear waste has been sitting in these containers for up to 80 years, and so far, so good. Thing is, they're not actually supposed to stay there forever. According to Canada's Nuclear Waste Management Organization, this kind of storage is safe, but requires ongoing maintenance and management, which isn't sustainable over the very long period. According to one report, it is inevitable that some structural degradation of these temporary bunkers will occur over time.
It's well designed and it provides adequate shielding and protection for the fuel for 50 years. But you know, from 50 to 75 to 100 years, we know that concrete can't last forever.
Eventually, if things degrade too much, that report argues, the waste will need to be transferred, increasing the risk to the workers involved in that transfer and of accidents happening during transport. You could have radioactive particles leaching into local soil, groundwater, things like that. Then there are the security risks with above-ground storage, including the possible threat of deliberate spreading of contamination by terrorists. So, for the past few decades, Canada's been working on a plan to bury all of this waste deep underground, effectively forever. They want to move the tens of thousands of bundles of spent nuclear fuel from those concrete bunkers in 8 temporary storage facilities in New Brunswick, Quebec, Ontario, and Manitoba to an underground vault in one of 2 possible locations. One is South Bruce, about 2 hours outside of Toronto. The other is also in Ontario, but much further west. It's called Ignace, just over 2 hours from Thunder Bay.
In some of these communities, I mean, this idea was run out of town, right? And now, where we are, the only 2 communities are the only ones where there's a real shot left.
That's our CBC News colleague, Colin Butler. He's been covering this story since the beginning, visiting the communities and following each stage of development.
And they've even done test drilling on the ancient rock below it, and both of them have suitable geology.
The ancient bedrocks under both communities are so solid, they could foreseeably withstand the next ice age, which really helps illustrate how long they expect all of this waste to remain a problem.
So the rock and the system for storing the fuel has to withstand 3 kilometers of ice. You imagine the weight from 3 kilometers of the ice pushing down on this facility.
Now, it's about convincing those communities to agree. So yes, nuclear material itself is incredibly dangerous.
People think radiation, they think the atomic bomb, they think Hiroshima, they think Nagasaki, or even, I mean, right now, there's a really popular series on Amazon Prime called Fallout. So, and it's about a post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland.
The world is going to need you to build a better day after.
When you think of nuclear technology, and you think of nuclear technology when it goes wrong, I mean, it's the end of the world, right?
So this is basically it, right? Ask lots of people in these two towns about this idea of burying this much radioactive waste right under their homes and keeping it there forever. And they'll tell you, maybe it's worth thinking twice.
We're concerned that of future leaks.
We don't want South Bruce to become the ground zero for all of Canada's nuclear waste.
And to be fair, there have been accidents. There have been leaks. People have had to evacuate. They've gotten sick. Chernobyl, where many, many died, is still highly radioactive and sealed off. So the plan involves a whole bunch of layers to keep water away, to keep rust away, and to keep the radiation from these fuel rods locked deep underground.
It's like an onion with each layer providing an independent kind of encompassing structure to prevent the radiation leakage.
First, the fuel rods themselves would go in copper-coated steel containers. Steel is strong, copper resists rust and shields against radiation. Then those containers go into special bentonite clay boxes, creating yet another impermeable seal.
Bentonite clay is really amazing stuff. It is a clay that really, when water touches it, it swells and almost self-seals itself. So one of the things we would like to do is protect this fuel from water, because water could be one of the pathways that would transport any radiation that's leaked to the environment.
Those bentonite boxes get stacked on top of each other, and all the empty space between them gets filled with this self-sealing clay as well. And all of that in an underground vault over half a kilometer below ground, roughly as deep as the CN Tower is tall.
People have been meeting regularly for Q&As, town halls, right, where people can ask all sorts of questions. They can express their fears over the project, and there's usually a scientist there or somebody associated with the project to answer the questions or try to calm those fears, try to ease that anxiety.
But remember what I said at the start. This isn't zero risk. So there's dialogue, there's debate, but there's also big fat dollar signs. Canada's nuclear energy companies are bound by law to figure out a long-term storage solution for their nuclear waste. So they really want to make this happen. South Bruce has already received millions of dollars from the power companies that need to build this facility, and that's just for hearing the plan out. That money has been well used, offsetting pandemic costs, paying municipal salaries, even paying for firefighting equipment.
They bought new bunker gear for their volunteer firefighters. I mean, that's $30,000 a firefighter, right? So you can imagine that this money goes quite far.
And there's more to come through things like milestone payments. Every time the project completes a milestone, that's millions of dollars. For example, the community makes a decision to host the facility, $4 million. The proposed site gets the green light, $4.5 million. The license application for construction is submitted, $2 million. These payments, along with property taxes, add up to more than $400 million. So a ton of money, but also a ton of jobs, about 400 to 600 of them.
I think it was going to be a big improvement in the whole northwestern Ontario.
They're all farming towns, and the glory days of farming are behind them. So they need sort of a new economic driver.
But not everyone is convinced. Just last week, people in Ignace protested the project.
Northwestern Ontario is simply the dumping ground for this project because we have a smaller population. but we have a voice.
And some actually see all that money as a negative. They're worried their town is being bribed, essentially, into ignoring people's concerns.
The people who are against the idea of welcoming radiation into the community think that the people who want it because of the money, and they've been blinded by that money. So there's a lot of friction there.
So, Adrian, people in Ignace voted last week on whether they want the project to go ahead. Those results, we won't know what they are until this summer. In South Bruce, the referendum is planned for the fall. If both say yes, the group in charge of this project plans to pick one of them by the end of this year.